Betsy Van Dyke is one of Albuquerque's outstanding music educators. She takes us through her musical journey from starting on clarinet and then transitioning to trombone. At every school she has taught, she has developed award-winning programs. Betsy Van Dyke is next on OTP.
Let's jump right in.
Okay.
I want to know, first of all, did your parents play any instruments, or your siblings?
My dad played the clarinet. Yeah, and I actually didn't find out till after he passed away that he had a band in college called Johnny and the Rockets or something.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
Yeah, I never knew. I mean, I grew up with a man, I never knew anything about him. It's like kind of sad, you know? But yeah, he was a clarinet player, and I had a choice of clarinet or flute when I was wanting to be in band. What I really wanted to do, though, was Mr. Higgins. Mr. K.L. Higgins came to my elementary school because I went to elementary school here.
Right.
And he was talking about violin, and I wanted to play the violin so badly. I went home, my mom said, no, this is not.
Did she give you a reason why? No?
No. She just said no. And I said, you don't have to pay for it. It's free. I don't have to pay for anything, Mom. No.
Yeah.
So I guess that's okay, because then I probably would have been an orchestra conductor, right?
Yeah. There you go. Well, so you went into clarinet. Did you like the instrument when you started?
I did. No, I really liked it. I could choose that or the flute. My sister had a flute and she didn't play. My dad had the clarinet. So it was either one we had in the family. So because back in the day when I went to school, they didn't give you everything you wanted.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
I had to buy my own reeds. I mean, think of that. Have to pay for your own stuff. Right.
Right.
So we had a clarinet in the house, and I loved it. You know, I love my music.
Great.
I love being
Great.
in a band. I don't know. It's just super special to me.
So you made that connection to the band right away.
I did.
It's
Mhm.
and
It
it's
was my
like seventh grade.
sixth grade seventh grade. Yeah, you're right. Seventh grade. Yeah, band was in seventh grade, and yeah, I loved it. I loved my band director. His name was Les Somerville. He's been long passed away, but
Yeah.
I had him for my first 2 years, and he was just amazing. He was so cool.
You know, let me ask you, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but that leads me to a question of, do you think that experience with your first band teacher played some role of how you put your teaching style together?
You know, I don't really know, because
So far away.
it was so far away. I think what I liked, he was just a really gentle person, and I just felt that feeling of belonging, you know,
Okay.
right away. I felt like my clarinet, and it was all mine. Nobody could take it away from me. You know,
Yeah.
I was not allowed to practice after a certain amount of time at night. The TV went on, practicing was off.
Yeah.
You know, my siblings complained about it, of course, but it was still mine. My mom couldn't take it away from me. Nobody could take it away. It was
Right.
really important to me. I didn't really have any great directors in junior high or high school.
Uh,
And I just kept playing. You know, I just kept playing. I don't know how or why, really. You know what I mean?
yeah.
It wasn't like I had this director that's, oh, I'm just learning so much. It's just something that I was just drawn to. And I needed that for my soul.
So, yeah, that's what I was going to get to, that you've made that personal connection right away. Yes.
I did.
Yeah. Now, with what I'm hearing from you with the clarinet, when it was time for you to move forward in college, why did you make that change to trombone?
Well, when I was in college, I was so intimidated by everybody else. I think back when I went to college, if you were a music ed major, I think some people kind of looked down on you.
Oh,
And I was a pretty introverted person at times. I am. And to be in practice rooms like that with everybody listening, you know, I always felt like they were coming to the door and listening. And
yes.
I just
Go
didn't feel
ahead.
comfortable. You know, I didn't feel comfortable. And so I didn't really like my clarinet lessons. I'd always ditch them, put a note under the door. I mean, I just was like, maybe I wasn't ready to go to school. I don't know, but I just didn't find my niche there. And then I took a 155 class with Carl Hinterbickler, who's still at UNM, as a matter of fact. And I just fell in love with the trombone.
Wow.
I loved it. I mean, the embouchure is pretty much similar in a lot of ways, which people thought that was really weird, but I started practicing, and, 155 class, I'm sitting there doing 2 hours of trombone practicing, for this education class. And,
but let me back you up for a minute, though. What I heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, you had this kind of intimidated kind of feeling on the clarinet in the practice room, but then you didn't have it when you went to trombone? What's up with that?
I have no idea, but it was so cool because as a wind player, that you put some fingers down, you're usually going to get the right note, right?
Right.
And when you play trombone, I was like, what the heck, man? I can get any note in any position. So I would grab people, people I knew that could play piano, and sit in the practice room, and we just match pitch, spend time matching pitch. Okay. And then the more I played, and, tuners became more available, as technology increased as I got older, right. I would sit there and practice like from F to F sharp for 20 minutes and close my eyes and make sure I had F sharp in tune.
Yeah.
F sharp's kind of a funky position on the trombone. Yeah. So I spent hours doing that.
Yeah. Do you think, I don't want to get off of this too fast because I'm fascinated with this. Okay, first of all, I can relate about the feeling in the practice room when I was a freshman, and I wasn't, the best on tenor sax coming in as a freshman and practicing. And I remember Mr. Wiley coming over, knocking on the door, and I was working on it. We had those juries, every Friday. Yeah. And he came in and he said, son, you're never going to play that right, and I was like freaking out, and I don't know what he was trying to intimidate, or I don't think he was intimidate because he was a nice guy, but I think he was trying to motivate me, but I didn't take it that way. I took it like intimidation.
But I don't think that's the way to motivate somebody. You're never going to do that. I would be like, I'd go to my lesson and Carl would say, well, here's the tempo. It's pretty fast. And I'd beat the tempo. Yeah. I'd go home and see if I could. And the really cool thing was I had a lot of dexterity on my clarinet, and I could articulate really well. So I could transfer that to my trombone. So I could play, really fast notes and stuff and not have a problem articulating. So
right.
Plus.
Yeah. So you moved to trombone, and I wanted to ask this because you talked about looking down on the musicians. Now, do you think at that period of time the other students in college had a different point of view on music majors, or talk a little bit about that?
It was, like I said, a long time ago, but I really think that, unless that was only my own mind, but I kind of think if you were a music ed major, you weren't a good musician.
Okay.
And I had this really crazy idea. Why should I have to practice and play an instrument if I'm just going to teach it? I mean, that's my.
Now, wait a minute.
Seriously, why do I have to? I mean, that was, if I'm just going to teach music, then teach band, then why do I have to worry about practicing my clarinet? That's what it was, my clarinet. Why can't I just take education, and I thought, now I look back, that was somebody who was like, 18 at the time, 19.
Yeah.
In fact, that's what I think really helped me with my teaching, is spending all those hours practicing.
Right.
And learning how to, in the groups I was in, we was a lot of small groups and ensembles. I was in a brass quintet for years at UNM.
Yes.
And I just loved it. And those kind of rehearsals, I think, really helped with my own teaching on how to get kids to learn things.
Right. And that goes to, that whole view. I really feel strongly about this, is that if your own person struggle on an instrument, how that student feels and what other hurdles they're going through. But talking about why to one of the first things I would tell a lot of my student teachers was grab a trumpet, grab a clarinet, whatever instrument,
Mhm.
get some drumsticks, learn how to do a 5-stroke roll, and 10, long stroke and so forth. Get out there and get your feet wet.
Well,
Um,
every summer I would take a different instrument. During the
right.
summer I take lessons. I took
Yep.
horn lessons. I took drum lessons with Jay.
Right.
I used to,
Yeah.
why can't you guys play this drum set? And then I took drum lessons and went, oh, now I know I can't play
Yeah.
the drum.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
and I think that, it's really important that I had one of the teachers that I know told me, well, why do you have all those fingerings in your brain? Why do you need to
Right.
know all those fingerings? I'm like, well, how can you not learn them when you teach it? After a while, you just know that A flat on a flute, this is how you finger it.
Right. Right.
It's
Yeah.
just, it's not something,
Yeah.
it just comes natural, right?
Right. Right. Yeah. And I think natural for some people, other people may struggle, but it's something that is needed when you go into that band room to help the youngsters
Oh,
get a good start. Yeah. So,
definitely.
so you talked about some of the ensembles in college there that you played on. I want to tap into the music that you were identifying with, you enjoyed playing at that time in college. Were you into jazz, pop, or what kind of music were you enjoying to
Well,
play?
jazz, I was never into jazz
Hmm.
because I was really intimidated by it.
Yeah.
When I was in junior high, clarinets wouldn't be allowed to be in the jazz band, which never made sense to me as an adult. I
Right.
mean, really,
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I never really got the whole jazz thing.
Right.
And
Right.
then I think just working on the trombone, my favorite things were like probably really contemporary pieces. I did some pieces with tape, which of
Right.
course now it wouldn't be a tape, but
Right.
it just
Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
I liked a lot of that kind of music,
Right.
contemporary stuff. It
Yeah.
was fun to
Yeah.
play and it really always challenged me.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. So you come out of college and teaching. Did you ever think about teaching out of state, or did you want to stay in New Mexico?
Yeah, I got married when I was 19.
Uh-huh.
So I was married and then I had my 3 kids by the time I was 24.
Oh, yes.
I didn't really have an opportunity at that point to say, oh yeah, I'm going to go to Chicago and go to school. Right.
Yeah. Grab the kids.
I mean, it was kind of like, what do? You do what you can. I remember trying to take lessons like while I was teaching and it just was too hard. It was
Yes.
too hard to go to work when the kids were a little bit older, then come home and have dinner and kids. And I remember
Right.
one time when we lived out in Edgewood, came home from work and I said, oh, I was actually playing with the Santa Fe Symphony, which was kind of cool.
Yeah.
This is a long time ago. And so I remember sitting in the laundry room practicing. And it's like 7:30 at night. I've worked all day. It takes an hour to get to work driving from Edgewood down to the South
Right.
Valley. I'm sitting at the washing machine practicing my trombone going, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not doing this. I had to make a choice and
Right.
it's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Different time, different whatever. But
Right. Right.
I had my family and
Right.
my teaching.
You still didn't let your playing go. You still kept
No.
you still kept it with you and kept
Mhm.
fighting through the life that comes your way. What keeps that in your soul?
Well, I haven't practiced much. I did prepare for the recital that I gave you that little video of.
Uh-huh.
I decided I was going to have a senior recital since I was a senior citizen. And I stood up at church and said, okay, I'm giving my senior recital. And it was something I had to prove to myself that I could play
Right.
again.
Right.
And I miss playing. I really
Yes.
do. I loved it. I just love the sound. I think I have a really nice trombone sound when I practice
Yeah.
and start playing. And so yeah, the recital was just something I wanted to show my girls that you can
Right.
be my age, which was 64 at the time, and you could still start from. I hadn't performed in over 30 years solo.
Right.
So I pulled out one of my graduate pieces that I did on my graduate recital.
There you go.
And I worked on that. I took lessons
Right.
with Byron Harrington and it was a lot of fun. And just learned some good things, and it was just something I wanted to do, something I had to
Good for
accomplish.
you.
It was just, and I miss it. I wish I would want to make a commitment and go somewhere and play. Right now I'm just not interested in committing myself any day of the week to do anything.
But you're still playing your music. You told me today off mic that you're working with bands and it's still in your life.
Mm-hmm.
That's a nice lead in to your piece. Let's take a look at a little snip, a little part of that recital. I'll bring the music down a little bit and you can just talk over it here.
Okay.
For the listeners, you'll hear the audio. And if you want to see it, then you'll go to YouTube and don't forget to subscribe. Let's take a look. That is nice. Talk us through this a little bit.
Well, I asked Mark, can you see Mark in the sax? And then Marin is in the back and Jay's on the drums. And my pastor actually used to sing with the Benny Goodman Band. So, and that's Clara, who does a lot of music here in town. And one of the pieces we were playing, and I'm not a good jazz improvisation person at all. So it took a long time and a lot of frustration, a lot of listening, to try to get something to where it would sound doable.
Yes.
So that was really pushing it to do that. But I wanted to do a piece that everybody would enjoy. So we did a couple jazz pieces.
Yeah.
But my favorite piece was working on the solo piece that I did. And I didn't have a recording of that. That's what I really wanted to. I didn't get a recording of my recital, which is kind of a bummer.
I know.
So disappointed because I won't do it again.
Yeah.
But I love preparing. I loved it.
But the essence of what you were talking about is the essence of why I'm doing this podcast. You dedicated your career, your teaching career, teaching music, still playing. You got to play when you're teaching. There's no way around it.
Right.
But it may not be at the high level that you once were. I'm talking to myself as well. And so then at this point, retired, you said, hey, I want to put this performance on. And I think that's admirable. I really do. I congratulate you on that. And
it took me a year to prepare for it.
Absolutely.
A lot of practicing, a lot of recording and listening and getting critiqued by Byron, and I just put a lot of heart and soul into it. And I actually had my daughters there. I flew them in from Houston because I wanted them there. So I had my girls and my 3 grandsons that live here in Albuquerque, and there was like a crowd of like 75 people at the church.
Great, good for you.
Cool. It was fun. I loved it.
And that shows, I mean, that took guts, because you had an easy way out. You were retired and you could have said, I'm going to sit on a couch and put my feet up.
Mark, I have been a fighter my whole life. Somebody tells me I can't do something. Guess what?
Yeah,
I can do it, I fought to get through school, to get through living at home with not a really good family situation. Right. I fought my whole life. And and I think that's something I really tried to tell my students too, and show them.
Yeah.
No matter what level you're at, you can still be successful.
And that's another lead. And this is almost like we practiced this interview. We didn't. We're just winging it.
We did not, no.
Yeah. But talk about, I've watched you work in the classroom and you're teaching, and talk about your philosophy and your style. And we're going to get into the mentoring. What was your style and what was your approach in that band room for your students?
I don't know. I don't know if I really have an answer.
Wait a minute, it's a podcast now.
It just seemed like, my first 2 years I was at El Dorado, I was Stuart Fessinger's assistant.
Okay.
And I learned, I'd never done anything with band. I went to school. I was in the orchestra. I didn't do the band thing. I hadn't been in high school forever because I was 30 years old when I went back to school.
Right.
When my girls were like really young, I wanted to get back to school then. And 2 years with Stuart, I learned how to put the band together. I learned how to deal, I learned a lot from him and being in that situation. And I did a lot of errors, even till the end, I was still making mistakes. And I just think Ron Lipka, who, if anybody's listening, knows that he just passed away a week ago.
Yeah.
He was such a huge thing in my life when I started teaching.
Preaching.
He was gone. He came back, I think, when I got into Jackson. I didn't work with him a lot until really I got to Madison and I started doing more jazz. Right. And he wasn't, he was around, but he told me this, which has always been in the front of my mind when I learned it from him in my teaching, is that we teach kids first. We teach music second. Yeah. And even though there were times in my classroom I forgot that, I'd be like, "Wow, why isn't that working?" I don't know. I just got up, got the music, started stuff, and just worked with the kids. I know that sounds crazy. You think I would have step 1, step 2, but I don't have that.
Yeah.
Like teaching today, I got up in front of the kids today at Albuquerque High, and I just loved it. It's just like I never quit,
Right.
And it's just something I think, God gives people, like, they're missionaries in Africa, well, I could never go to Africa and do anything like that. I know I couldn't, sorry.
Yeah.
But I could be a missionary in my school.
Right.
And with
you
those
were.
kids, those middle school kids, they needed people, just like like with you, they need someone that gives them boundaries, loves them, helps them.
Yep.
And I think that's what my job was. And music was just a way to do it.
Yeah.
I know that doesn't answer your question, but I don't.
I'm all on board with you. It's a lot like being a parent because you have to give them those boundaries. And I used to tell the band, the youngsters, that you know what, this is all coming from love, and I'm trying not to always raise my voice or get mad, but we all are human, and this is part of it. And like Ron, God bless him, I had those moments also. Talk about the mentoring. Now you're taking those skills and passing the baton.
I'm not mentoring anymore. Right. I did for 4 years. I like that too. I didn't like it as much as being in front of the classroom. I'd rather be in front of kids, but I liked helping the teachers. And, sometimes I was a little brutally honest, like, that's not what you wear to teach in, or, why are you carrying that mug around with you while you're teaching all day? I mean, I would just, things like that, I'd get really annoyed, and they would just go, oh, but, just helping them. And when we went into teaching, probably same thing with you, we didn't have mentors that came to our classroom. I mean, if you wanted someone to come to your classroom, at least with me, and I always had people come in and critique me. Ron, come tell me what I'm doing wrong. Luis, come tell me what, what I mean? I didn't mind that, but I paid for a lot of those people to come into my classroom.
Yes.
The mentoring program that they had through APS, the teachers didn't have to pay for that. They didn't have to come out of their classroom budget. And I love just sitting there and, look, this is really good. I saw some really great teaching. And I even learned from some of the young teachers.
Sure.
And I enjoyed the mentoring. It kept me engaged with the kids even a little bit. The kids would get to know me. And once in a while, then I had a teacher, oh, I'm not feeling good. Will you take the classroom? Oh, yeah, okay. I'd love to.
Yeah.
Or can you fill in this or whatever? And, but I think to have that mentoring and have a person, and I used to tell them, I don't know everything.
Sure.
And I don't expect you to be like me, but I know more than you.
Yeah.
I know more than you on how to run a classroom. I know more than you about how to do this. Now, computer stuff, No,
Right.
no. And but so why don't you take what I have to offer and
Right.
use some of it, and call me, and, I had teachers crying, and, I'd sit
Yeah.
and just talk to them and go, I know, I remember
Yeah.
those days.
Right.
So a lot of people,
Yeah.
there's some that wouldn't listen to me, you
Yeah.
know, they wouldn't, you kind of suggest something, and then in a concert, they would do totally the opposite, and their concert would fall apart.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, what do you do?
Right. Yeah.
Sorry, you should have listened to what I was trying to
Yeah.
tell you.
And so
You know,
do it different next time because that didn't
yeah,
work.
it
Yeah.
didn't work. I mean, we all have to learn that way, right?
I absolutely. I wanted to mention on the mentoring. Shout out to Bruce Dalby. I had an opportunity to be his assistant and got a chance to watch him a lot and steal. I call it stealing techniques, teaching techniques on how he puts a score together, how he works a score, and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Again, Ron Lipka's same thing. And then I watched some directors that I thought, I think I don't want to do it that way, and
I think that's a good thing. I think it's good to watch people. I mean, I've seen a lot of directors, I'll leave their classroom going, I wish I could help you. I mean, I just to myself, I would never say that to
Sure.
them, but you
Yeah.
leave that classroom shaking your head going, and when I went to a concert with one of the directors here, when my grandkid was there, and I was just appalled at what happened at the concert, and I, even emailed this director, and I said, just speaking as a music educator of 30 years, here's a suggestion, not as a Nana, you
Right.
just offended my grandkid,
Yeah.
in public or whatever, you know what I mean? I did that. And I said, this is my suggestion. And do you think that director listened to what I said?
Right.
Nope.
Yeah.
Did the
Yeah.
same thing at another concert. The
Yeah.
same thing.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
I didn't have a problem. I remember Ron one time, this is super funny. My jazz skills were not very good. Anyway, I picked out this piece for jazz band, and I had just granddaughters in my band program at Madison.
Mm.
So we get done with this jazz piece, and he comes down. The first thing he says, well, I guess you'll never do that piece again. I'm like, okay, thanks. And guess what?
Yeah.
Never did.
Never did it again.
But instead of saying, oh, yeah, his first thing, I mean, you'll never do that one again. So
Right.
I
Yeah.
was kind of
Yeah.
like, okay.
Yeah. Hey, it's honest. And, Ron had that way of, getting to you, and he knew what to say with different people and how to get it across to different people. And it was great to have him during the time that we did. Talk a little bit to our listeners about that connection to music. If I'm getting older, I once played, and now I was talking to a guy on the radio about he played in high school, and said he went to All-State, so he had some chops, wherever he was, and but I haven't played, and he said I don't even know if I could play a B-flat concert anymore. Talk to those listeners about why to get music back in your soul again.
Oh my gosh. Well, I don't think it ever leaves. You know what I mean?
Right.
But if I haven't practiced much lately, I was actually doing some clarinet duets with a friend of mine a couple weeks ago, which was really fun. But anybody can pick their horn back up again. You can pick it back up again. It just it's frustrating. Like when I first started practicing my trombone again, my lips would be swollen, and I wouldn't be able to play as long. But it takes you just get your endurance back, and you just start out and get a beginning book again. Start working on that stuff, and that's what you have to do. And music, it's always there. I listen to music. I have a hard time. This sounds really weird, but I have a hard time listening to a lot of classical music.
Really?
Because it's really emotional to me.
Uh-huh.
There's pieces I would love to have played, but I never will.
Yeah.
Just because that's life, and I could never. But yeah, that's hard. And jazz,
I think you're right. It never leaves. You just have to dig deeper down to bring it back.
Yeah. I mean, for a while I was singing it in the choir at church, and I love that, all the connections with music.
Yeah.
I really, really, it'll always be there. I started jazz super late in life, And I fell in love with that. And I'm just like, oh man,
Yeah.
I would have loved to have known that and done that
Right.
all the way through, because I love jazz now.
Right.
I was never introduced to any of that.
Right.
And some of these great jazz musicians were still alive when I was a kid,
Yeah.
and I never had the opportunity, Parents,
Right.
when I was young, my parents didn't take kids out. It was
Yeah.
two parents that went out. Kids were left at home.
Yeah.
They didn't
Right.
take you to concerts like that, like
Right.
my daughters do. They take their kids to stuff like that,
Right. Right. Yeah.
When I was growing up, which was like, what, 60 years ago? Oh my gosh, 55, 60 years ago, we didn't have the access to music like they do now.
True.
If you couldn't afford to buy a record, which I never had any money to go out and buy records, right? Not as a young kid, 8, 9, 10 years old, you didn't go buy records.
Right.
And we didn't sit around and listen to the radio all day. Our parents said, "There's the door. See you for dinner." You know what I mean? You could go out and play with your friends all day, ride your bike.
Right.
You didn't sit in the house and have things plugged into your ears all day
Right.
and listen to whatever. We were outside and messing around like that.
Yeah.
So I didn't get any. Like, my mom, she used to listen to Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin and all those guys
Right.
every night.
Right. Yeah.
That's about it in my family.
Yeah.
Even though my dad was a musician in college, he was a doctor, but we never really.
Yeah.
Never
And
had
I
that,
guess
which is weird.
the motto to the story is, if you're listening, expose your kids to all the music and start them early.
There's so much you can do nowadays, right?
Right.
You don't have to go to the store and buy a record or an album or a CD. All you have to do is turn on your phone, and a lot of that streaming services are free.
It's right there. There you go.
They're free. They really are.
Well, and that's another lead into, first of all, I want to thank you so much for taking the time, Betsy.
Well, this was so much fun. I was kind of nervous, but you made it really easy. It was nice.
Yeah.
That was really nice that you asked me. I hope.
Absolutely.
That was worthwhile.
I've been fortunate to, I call them angels from God, to have so many wonderful people, and you're one of them, that came across in my life through music and band directing and so forth. And we want to hear your journey. We want to hear, and it's not over. It's still going on.
No,
so.
it's not. In fact, I told Andrew, my oldest grandson, I said, "Now, when I die at my service, I want you to sing Over the Rainbow." And he's like, "Nana, I don't want to talk about that." I said, "I know, but I want you to do that. Play it on your ukulele and sing it for me, okay?"
There you go. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a long way off. So
I hope so. I don't want to leave for at least another 20 years, dude.
there you go. But thank you so much, Betsy. It's been a blast. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
I want to thank the listeners and the viewers. You can find this podcast. Let me do the business. You can find this podcast at Spotify, YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe, and any other of your podcast platforms. Until next time, let's try to play all the right notes.
You've been listening to The Podium. If you would like to be a guest on The Podium, email the show at onthe-podium2@gmail.com. That's ONTHEPODIUM TOO@gmail.com.